Antenna's VP Strategy shares insights from new research on specialty SVOD services showing robust growth, strong Amazon channels dependence, and a couple of breakout successes. Listen on.
And welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Stream. This is Will Richmond from Video News, and that was Colin Dixon from End Screen Media at the top. Hey, Colin, I assume you're as excited as I am to have Brendan on with us today on the podcast.
I am, yeah. We get to talk about specialty SVOD, which we haven't done on the podcast in a while. So let's jump in, shall we?
Okay, great. So first of all, again, welcome to our guest, Brendan Brady, who is the VP of Strategy at Antenna. So nice to have you back, Brendan.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, Brendan, welcome.
Awesome. So we are today going to do a deep dive into Antenna's most recent report about specialty SVOD services. A reminder to listeners, hard as it is to believe, it's been almost 2 years since October 2024 that Colin and I discussed this report with Jonathan Carson at Antenna. So here we are 2 years later, and a lot has changed in the landscape. So Brendan, let's go ahead and get started. Let me just ask you to kind of briefly, first of all, explain what a specialty SVOD service is and a brief overview of the landscape as you found things to be in the report.
Happy to. Thanks, Will. So we at Antenna cover SVODs, right? When we think about SVODs, we often think about these big, what we call premium SVODs. These might be the supersized services, the Netflix, the HBO Max, the Disney Pluses of the world. We also cover a whole host of what we call these more specialty SVOD services. And that's what we'll focus on today. I think the way to think about specialty SVOD is that these are smaller, more targeted services, often built around one audience or one genre. Take, for example, Shudder from AMC Networks, which focuses squarely on horror programming. So premium are these big, broad-based general entertainment services, and specialty are these more targeted or niche services. I think there are some key dynamics just worth calling out up top for specialty SVODs. The first of which is that the pie is still growing. Specialty SVODs grew 14% year over year. The second is that the way in which consumers purchase specialty SVODs differs greatly from how they purchase premium SVODs in a lot of cases. And then lastly, we had two new specialty services launching recently that this report covered. Those two services are Howdy and The Wonder Project. Combined, they've pulled in over 5 million signups. They're showing really strong retention. And what this really proves to us is that these new entrants are showing that the appetite for these specialty services is real.
Great, and we'll get to Howdy and the Wonder Project in just a second, Brendan. But why don't we talk a little bit about specialty SVOD volatility? Because looking at a couple of the charts, it had us wondering if maybe volatility was lower with specialty SVOD than it is for premium.
Yeah, so when we look in Q2 26 in the specialty SVOD category, we saw 11.2 million gross ads against 9.4 million cancels, netting us to 1.8 million positive net additions. 9 of the last 10 quarters in specialty SVOD were positive at the aggregate level. And the reason I love the Antenna volatility chart so much is that it really highlights how consumers move in and out of these subscriptions. If you think about the traditional pay TV model, sure, one night a consumer may have watched MTV, and then the next night they may have watched USA Network. However, they weren't exactly ending their financial relationship with MTV on the night that they watched USA Network. Now consumers can effectively do that. There's virtually no switching costs moving in and out of these SVODs. And so that volatility chart from Antenna, where we show in aggregate across a category, the gross ads, the cancels, and then the subsequent net ads, either positive or negative, we tend to look at that as a really strong market signal of how the consumer is aggressively managing subscriptions. And with specialty, we've seen mostly positive growth.
And Brendan, just to follow up on that, looking at that chart, it seemed that that 1.8 million net ad number in Q2 of 26 is the biggest quarter that specialty SVOD has had, going back to all the way back to Q4 24, with the one exception of Q4 25, which saw 2.5 million subscribers added. Is that accurate to say?
Yes, that is. And so looking at that chart, we did see quite a strong Q2 26. Compared to Q2 25, there were 1.4 million net ads positive. Q2 26, that rose to 1.8 million. So year over year across those Q2 periods, we have seen more growth recently. Now, Will, you've called out those periods of strength in Q4, and those tend to be a strong period for all SVODs, but especially the specialty SVODs. We often see a lot of Black Friday promotions as well as Cyber Monday promotions that really can be a driver behind SVOD overall, but particularly these specialty services.
Very good. And with the specialty services, are they offering ad-supported plans as well as no ad plans, just like the premium services? Because I know several of the ones that I subscribe to, like BritBox, they don't have an ad-supported plan at all.
Yeah, so we've seen less ad-supported subscription tiers available in the specialty category. AMC Plus is in market with an ad-supported tier. BET Plus was in market. Now as that potentially gets migrated away, the ad tier may go with it. And so we haven't seen as much proliferation in ad-supported subscriptions in specialty as we have for premium. Now, of course, advertising is a scale game, right? And so while these specialty services may be able to introduce advertisers to a very specific demographic or audience, that could certainly be valuable. These services tend to not, be at the scale of these premium SVODs, where we see increasingly a shift towards these ad-supported subscriptions.
Where they have the ad-supported subscriptions, do people behave from a volatility and longevity standpoint pretty much the way they do with no ads?
So I'll have to call upon data from the premium category, just because the ad-supported activity in specialty is probably too small to make any grand statements around right now. Now, over time, that may change. However, when we look at volatility or this idea of loyalty or subscription management on ad-supported tiers versus ad-free tiers in premium, we actually see that these ad-supported tiers are driving a lot of the growth. And from a loyalty perspective, these consumers on each tier look more or less the same in terms of how long they stay subscribed, which we find interesting always.
Wow. Yeah.
So, Brendan, let's kind of get to the brass tacks here. As you say, we have specialty SVOD growing at a faster pace than overall premium SVOD. We also have specialty SVOD notching a big Q2 relative to the last couple of years or so. We'll talk in a moment about churn and retention, but what's going on here? Why are special SVOD services doing as well as they're doing?
Look, I think the consumer has certainly embraced these types of services, and it could be a confluence of factors underneath the hood in terms of what is driving that growth. And I'm sure we'll get more into the nuances around all of this in a bit, but distributors play a large role. Additionally, I think just the macro cord cutting environment, as more and more people leave the traditional pay TV ecosystem, they may open up their wallet to more of these SVOD offerings, including specialty. Again, I kind of drew a parallel earlier in this episode comparing MTV and USA Network. If someone leaves the traditional pay TV ecosystem, they still might want something that's like a cable network, right? That's tend to be focused on one sort of theme or brand or for one audience. And so these people may be leaving the old ecosystem and kind of rebuilding that package with specialties, playing a role in that rebuilding.
Let's talk about the role of these distributors and which ones are really successful. In the last report, Amazon Channels was very successful. Is that still the most successful one? And what about the other ones? Are any of the other ones making progress?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that Amazon Channels is really a front door into specialty SVOD. We found Amazon Channels averaged 4.8 million specialty gross ads a quarter in 2024. That went up to 5.8 million a quarter in 2025. And through the first half of 2026, that is at 6.6 million gross ads on average each quarter. So we certainly see Amazon Channels as this destination where folks find specialty SVOD services. Total specialty gross ads in Q2 26 specifically were at 11.2 million. Amazon was 67% of the category's gross ads in that period.
Wow.
So they're really a big player in the space. Now, at the same time, we've seen the Roku channel, premium subscriptions through the Roku channel. Those have certainly been growing. And at the same time, so have YouTube primetime channels, the channels ecosystem offering from YouTube proper.
So, Brendan, we're going to certainly want to talk about YouTube's role and Roku's role and potentially others' role as well. But let's focus on Amazon for a second. 67% share, the really bona fide front door, if you will, as you said, to the specialty SVOD category. I took a look back at the chart when we spoke to Jonathan about this now almost 2 years ago. In Q2 of 24, Amazon's share, the front door share, if you will, was 59%. It's now 67%, as you said. What's going on here? Amazon seems like they're running away with the game, if that's fair to say.
Yeah, so a big part of this report, we looked at how do new people or new consumers come into the specialty SVOD category. And so we looked at first-time buyers of a specialty SVOD service, and we can measure where are they buying these services and what services are they buying. So when we limit our measurement for people who are new to Amazon, so new to Amazon as a distribution ecosystem, we found that 45% of people who came in new to Amazon channels in Q2 26, their first pick of service was a specialty SVOD service. Now, other distribution channels do not look like that. And so underneath the hood, what could be driving that? Well, one, Amazon, given its pedigree, is tends to be pretty good at merchandising things, right? And this is really a storefront and a channel storefront. And so they may be just excellent at getting the right things in front of the right people at the right time.
Does Amazon also, how does it do with selling the second and the third service? So, you know, it's one thing to get people to buy one. Do people come back and buy more through that same channel?
Yeah. So when we look at the percentage of people who have tried, say, 2 or more specialty SVOD services, we find that about 1 in 5 new Amazon channel subs add a second service within 6 months. So we tend to see that a consumer can get comfortable stacking subscriptions within a singular environment. That being said, they may be comfortable stacking subscriptions. They may also be comfortable managing subscriptions through that specific environment. And a consumer may think about Amazon Prime Video as this big app that features transactional video on demand, SVOD, FAST, and other channels as well. And that may be their video hub, and they may feel, less specific loyalty to one specific service, and they may just be comfortable in the ecosystem. And so, Colin, that can kind of cut 2 ways where, yes, a very productive consumer who is spending a lot and watching a lot, they may stack their subscriptions, but at the same time, someone also is able to kind of aggressively manage those subscriptions through that platform overall.
Brendan, but it's fair to say that they're not spending their time exclusively there because obviously things like Netflix and Disney Plus are just not available there, yeah?
Of course. So, yes, Netflix and the Disney services being the 2 big holdouts within the Amazon channels or even just channels ecosystems more broadly. We thought it was really interesting last year when Fox One, Peacock, and Apple TV joined Amazon Prime Video channels. What that marked was a lot of sports rights being available through the Prime Video app. Now, granted, you'd have to stack a bunch of services, Fox One, Paramount Plus, Peacock, Apple TV, and so on. But you could more or less get the bulk of the sports rights, save for ESPN, of course, right there in that Prime Video Blue app.
Brendan, we're not going to ask you to speculate on if or when we might see Disney and or Netflix in the Amazon channel storefront, so you can
relax.
You can rest easy on that one, because I know.
Well,
that
I've actually, what's been interesting, some equity research analysts and folks in the industry that I follow closely, they've talked about, could one of these big services, say a Netflix or a Disney, launch their own sort of channels environment, right? So that's certainly just a theme. Right. I'm not commenting by any means on strategies around those companies, but just an overall theme that I'm keeping an eye on as more ink is spilled kind of in that zone.
I think we'll come back a little bit to the distribution in a moment, but I didn't want to lose the thread about the specialty SVOD services themselves that are succeeding right now. And you guys did some nice research there. You've already mentioned Howdy and Wonder, but give us a broader sense of what's going on here. Who's winning and what's the dispersion look like?
Yeah, so when we look at the 1.8 million net adds, this being the biggest quarter, kind of going back quite a bit, when we look at kind of what's underneath that, right, when we look at the category in aggregate, what is driving that growth, we see it's primarily driven by those you mentioned, Will, Howdy, Wonder Project, these new entrants. But then at the same time, we continue to see consistent growth from MGM Plus as well as from AMC Plus. We also see Crunchyroll kind of driving growth as well.
Let's talk specifically about Howdy and the Wonder Project. So they launched, I think Howdy launched last year, and I don't remember when the Wonder Project launched. Talk us through their launch strategies and how important each individual aggregator has been to them. I mean, obviously, I would expect Howdy is driven by the Roku channel and Roku, right?
It's actually quite interesting. So just to share some top line stats across these two services, the new entrants to the specialty SVOD category, Howdy and the Wonder Project. So we've measured 5.2 million combined signups since the launch across each of these services. However, these signups came in opposite shapes, right? When we looked at the Wonder Project, they did over 500,000 signups just in the first month. They passed 1 million signups by month 3. Howdy built more as a slow burn, and then it really accelerated. Howdy actually caught a second wave of growth, capturing nearly 1.3 million signups between April and June 26. What happened over that time was actually, Colin, to disagree with you, it was when Howdy became available on Prime Video channels. So when Roku opened up distribution of their service more broadly. And that's where we actually see sort of the change in slope of the growth line associated with Howdy, which was quite interesting to see.
Wow, that's really surprising. So one of the things I was going to come back to ask you about was the success of Roku. Roku has seen good growth as being an aggregator, a reseller of services, right? And I was wondering if that was primarily due to Family TV and Howdy. But what you're saying is that no, it's those services, or at least Howdy, is being primarily sold through Amazon.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's the consumer can find it on Amazon as well. And so Roku did not keep, the distribution entirely on Roku. And when they opened up that distribution, we certainly saw more acquisition coming in at the top of the funnel. That being said, Colin, to your point, we do continue to see some nice growth from the Roku channel, premium subscriptions through the Roku channel. So that's sort of their add-on channels offering. We found that those subscriptions were up 59% year over year into Q2 26. So subscriptions through that channel. At the same time, we saw YouTube primetime channels were up 47% year over year. I should be clear that I'm citing gross ad figures for the quarter. And also it's important to note that those year over year growth rates may disguise some of the volume underneath that. And so I've shared Amazon had 7.5 million gross additions in Q2 26. We saw the Roku channel had 1.4 million. Just for sense of scale differences there.
Okay.
Brendan, let's spend a minute on Wonder Project. This is actually a very interesting story. This is a faith-based specialty SVOD service. It was founded by an ex-Netflix and ex-YouTube executive named Kelly Merriman Hoogstraten, and I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. They have obviously gotten off to an extremely strong start. What do you sense the playbook is here? Is it as simple as they hooked up with Amazon channels early and got out of the gate strong, or is there more going on here? And what can other special SVOD services potentially learn from them?
Yeah, so I think the Wonder Project launched, and we've certainly seen that folks are coming into that service. Now, I think when we think about, okay, what can other specialty services potentially learn from that? I think the Wonder Project is very, very clear about their brand and their offering. These are the types of programs you're going to get here, and potentially that clarity in their vision and strategy resonates with consumers. And so I think something that all specialty services can take away is, kind of defining the exact game that they are playing, right? These services are unlike Netflix in that they are not endeavoring to be everything to everyone in the household. So I think getting really clear about the game you're playing and the value you will provide your audience, and then focusing on that obsessively. Of course, these specialty services are also not spending the same amount of dollars on their programming or their marketing as one of the supersized services. And so if you can really crush it with your niche and keep the economics all in line of how you're serving that audience, these can become really attractive businesses.
One of the things you mentioned earlier, I'd like to come back to, and that is the fact that some other folks are now sort of kicking the tires about coming in to become resellers and aggregators, one of which in particular is Disney, through Disney Plus. Now, Disney's been working really hard to reposition Disney Plus as the Disney hub of the home. By integrating Hulu and ESPN, both ESPN Plus and ESPN, Prime. And I'm just wondering, you're looking at the data, Amazon is totally dominating, but you are seeing progress by folks like the Roku channel and YouTube primetime channels. Do you think that there is room for Disney to muscle in here and carve out a part of this market?
Look, Colin, I think it's hard for me to comment on that directly. I think I would be super excited to measure it here at Antenna and bring some of that data to the industry if a service were to make a strategic decision like that. I think it would be fun to analyze and to measure. Of course, Disney is very comfortable in this sort of bundled posture, as they've kind of been leading the pack in terms of SVOD bundles, right? Having had this strong Disney bundle and now all the different SKUs of it, and now even opening themselves up to be bundle partners with services outside of the Disney umbrella, like Warner Brothers Discovery. So if that's something we'll see more of, we at Antenna will be thrilled to analyze it. To talk more specifically about what is the upside for a specific company, I think we have a lot of the data that can help someone make that decision.
And two quick follow-ons to Colin's question. Listeners will recall 2 weeks ago when on our podcast where we talked about Disney's opportunity in a channels environment. Colin was relatively bullish on their opportunity. I was relatively meh on their opportunity. So we'll certainly look forward, if they launch it, to seeing how Antenna settles this debate.
You can add on subscriptions through your Hulu, right? You could add Max or something like that. I remember years ago, we did an analysis. Are people with a Hulu SVOD subscription and an add-on more loyal to Hulu or less loyal? Now, there's two sides to that coin. One side is they're spending more money, so they might be more likely to cancel, right, as that bill creeps up each month. The flip side of it is they might be getting a lot of their video appetite right there through Hulu. And maybe that's home base and they'll actually be more loyal. In fact, we did find that folks who were spending more, folks who had more add-ons, were more loyal to the platform. So we thought that was an interesting finding when we had done that analysis a while back.
So I'll just add my second quick point, Brendan, as we're getting ready to wrap up here. related to the possibility of Disney coming into this channels category. There's also been a lot of speculation about Netflix coming into this channels category. I have a hunch about what your answer will be about Netflix's potential, but I'll go ahead and ask the question anyway.
Again, we'll be thrilled to measure a world where there are more distributors for us to measure. And so we could see how consumers move in and out of these distributors and how that impacts the services. Will, you did take the words out of my mouth. It would be harder for me to comment specifically on the potential upside for Netflix associated with that. But again, we at Antenna feel so privileged to have a lot of those ingredients to allow very smart people in the industry to think through things like that.
Okay, Brendan. Okay, we hear you. So I have one last question, and I'd love you to expand. I know you have this data. So I'm wondering about volatility and longevity of subscribers who come in through an aggregator or reseller like an Amazon Channels, or who buy individually directly from a subscription services. Do they look broadly the same, or is one better than the other?
It varies. It varies how they come in, right? So someone who comes in on an Amazon Channels flash sale, which might be something like 99 cents a month for 2 months, then converting to full boat retail price, that person might have a hard time on Amazon kind of getting through that conversion to retail point. It's a artificial price hike in a way. So people who might be like promo hopping, they can kind of game the system within a distribution environment. People directly, there's a chance they may forget about their subscription, for example. And so all of which is to say, Colin, there's so much nuance underneath the hood that while it's a bit of a cop-out answer, I will have to say that it very much does vary at the service level. It varies when in the calendar we're looking, what cohorts we're looking at. And that's really where a lot of the insights lives. It's kind of not saying this platform has a churn rate of X, this one has a churn rate of Y, good, bad, but really understanding who are these people coming into this specific platform, how do they relate to that service, and what does that mean for the business overall? I think it's more of a loaded question than just looking at any sort of headline metrics.
So, Brendan, this has been fantastic. I'm going to bring us home here with one or two last quick questions, and we'll see what we can squeeze out of you. And you're a tough customer, so we know by now, but I'll go ahead and ask anyway. The research is great. The trends are clear. As you look to the back half of 2026, and of course the all-important holiday season, are there any insights you'd share about what we might expect next? And are there any single biggest things you might advise specialty SVOD services to be doing to succeed?
Yeah, so I think, look, it's mid-late August. We do have, Q4 coming up, which, as we've seen on that volatility chart, tends to be go time for these specialty services. Now, there's some things going on for why that is go time. A lot of promotions. We also have specialty services like a Hallmark that's focused on that holiday season. That's their period of the calendar to shine. And so as we look ahead, shamelessly, I would want all of these specialties looking at the Antenna data to help inform their Black Friday strategy. Antenna has a lot of great information around that in terms of how do people come in? Do they convert to that retail price? What is their loyalty beyond that? And so we like to say we have a lot of the ingredients to help you inform that offer strategy. And, we tend to pick up in terms of busyness around those Black Friday periods. And so I think now's the time in August to start thinking about that. So I would urge any listeners at a specialty SVOD, please do reach out. We'll be happy to arm you with that intel.
And taking your sales hat off for just one moment, Brendan, anything we might expect in terms of trends in this back half of 26 based on what we've seen so far?
If we look at trends, I would keep an eye on YouTube primetime channels. The reason I say that is, a lot of people consume the Nielsen gauge in the industry when it is released, and there's always a lot of attention on that YouTube slice, right? That YouTube slice now, there's YouTube TV, there's the FAST, or what people traditionally, understand to be YouTube. And what they have lurking is this YouTube primetime channels environment. Now, YouTube primetime channels, as I've shared earlier, is growing off a smaller base. YouTube itself is a behemoth. So they have a lot of eyeballs there. They have a lot of attention there. Can they capitalize and turn those eyeballs into YouTube primetime channel subscribers? Can YouTube become a home, not just to watch your favorite, vlogger or really any sort of free ad-supported content, but can it also be the home to manage your Paramount Plus and your HBO Max and so on subscription? I think that's a really interesting channels ecosystem to watch as time goes on, just given all the buzz around YouTube in the industry more broadly.
Indeed, and that is probably a good point for us to wrap up, Brendan. This has been great. Thank you so much for sharing the information, and maybe you can just let people know where to come to find the report.
Awesome. Colin, Will, thanks for having me. Yes, and anyone interested in getting the paper copy of the report, you can find our website at www.antenna.live, and you'll be able to find the report download there.
Well, thanks so much, Brendan. As always, you're a fantastic guest, and antenna data continues to be invaluable to all of us in the industry. So keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Brendan.
Thanks, Brendan.
Inside the Stream is a production of In-Screen Media and Video News, all rights reserved.